Good afternoon, everyone. I hope everybody's doing well, blessed, and enjoying family. As always, muchas gracias to everyone for everyone's words, wishes, prayers, as the love and support everyone sends my way. From the heart, thank you. Also, do please like, share, subscribe, and hype the video. Gracias. And well, everyone, before getting into the story on hand, you know, yesterday after the live, I had a little step back and started reflecting on some things. And it's been a little time since I've been on here. Me personally, I didn't believe I was gonna be around this long. To be sincere, but again, I'm on God's time, right? But was something that caught on or logged onto my head was, you know, we lose track of what we're doing here. And you guys know I'm on here for the message, period, point blank. And I know maybe a lot of people don't believe it, but what I'm trying to say is that, within time things start coming on like as I'm here glorifying that lifestyle, what I was involved in, what I did, and I want to make it clear, even if I don't do it on every video, but that I'm not on here for that. I'm on here completely for the opposite. I'm not a dumb person, even if people think I am. At least to the sense to know that I'm 46 years old. I have nothing. I'm blessed every day. Thank you, Lord, because I'm out being a double lifer. But all I could really speak to you about is prison, politics, or doing this and that. I'm not an idiot, and I know that it's not how the world works. And it's not how one person should be locked into thinking, right? I'm glorified. That's why I never touch on things with details. As so I just want to make it clear, I'm on here for the message to help deter. I know I'm not going to be able to do it with everyone that hears the message, but at least one person that hears this and says, you know what, this fool's an idiot. I ain't going down that path. You know what? Maybe he's a liar. Maybe he's not. I'm not taking that chance. That's it. I understand. I seen someone commenting on almost every video after I put up the last video on, you guys know who, that I'm this, and that, and I'm a liar. That's cool. I understand, I ain't ice cream, rainbow sugar, right? So that everybody likes me, and I'm okay with that. You know, you're entitled to feel how you feel. Again, I'm not on here to be liked, you know. If you think that about me, that's cool. God bless and find something that you feel is real, That's it. Anyways, I don't want to make this too long. Again, this is in hopes I could shed some light on how things are really are inside, right? But anyways, I'm so sorry I took you on one. Today I want to touch on what I've been asked to touch on, which is the monsters case or issue from Bakersfield, right? But I'm gonna do it from my angle. You guys know I can't. Monster story is monster story alone, right? And I believe he told it, if I'm not mistaken, on the channel, right? But anyways, Monster's a perfect example on how a camarada is done wrong, you know, and by those that you or I or whatever, a camarada, considers our Pili, as many say, right? Hey, that's my Pili because he's from your town, he's from your neighborhood. And I know it's hard to grasp, and I understand it to the fullest, right? I'm there. I was there for over 23 years, right? Pushing for it. That there would be the ones that could actually over anything, right? Decide to cross you up and take you out. I know with Monster, it's a thing, right? It happened right after I personally had gone into the feds, and when it started circling around that I heard of it, I was already up there with Sana, right? And I'll be honest with you guys, the Pilis up there, they were, I'm not gonna say making fun of the Pilis from the state, but they were predicting exactly that. The older rotters are gonna get out and they're gonna flex their power. It's gonna be a trip to see how they're gonna do it, that type of thing. In that sense of conversation, it went right. And then you had Sana being a veterano in the organization, calling out names. Sana's favorite word was way. You know, vas a ver que este way, so and so and so and so. And one of them was Chavo. Chavo considers himself to be from the start one of the originals, one of the ones that really pushed it out there with his family, and he feels he has more power than other Pilis. And I seen it for instance up in the Bay, right? He felt not just certain part of Bakersfield was his. He felt he owned Bakersfield and surrounding areas, right? But anyways, when Chavo got out, he went to New Folsom, and news travels fast. It don't matter where you're at. It's a small world where we belong to, at least when we're doing time, right? And we were aware of the recall that he did on homies from Bakersfield, right? To to basically get themselves up there where he was at, to surround himself with a good amount of Bakersfield Ramfla. That's what was thought, right? But in reality, Chavo, Chavo was one of them. He wasn't a tecato. He was a straight dolphin. He was doing it to gain. For a long time when he was in the Bay, he felt a lot of neighborhoods from Bakersfield were pulling from him and going with the different Pili. And again, he felt he had that right, regardless, right? Which, me personally, I always stood quiet, but I didn't agree with it, right? That's how problems start. When a Pili belongs to a city, automatically your neighborhood belongs to him, or you can't even give your neighborhood the respects of them finding someone to pay their respects to. Nah, you're an object. You belong to this individual just because they say so, right? But anyways, it's when Monsters and others went up there. Monsters' case was a trip because he got okie doke. I'm not really sure 100% how much of his story he put out, but the reason that at least he believed was getting hit was because of his neighborhood. getting green lighted on the streets. That never happens, you know. And if that's to happen, it's gonna bring it's gonna bring war amongst Pilis inside. Cause like I said, there is good Pilis. When your neighborhood does something on the outs, yeah, you might get to catch the blues in the county, you know. But once you hit CDC, is if your name is not directly involved in the green light, it should not affect you, especially if you were there before. So Chavo's pool was for him to extract money from Monster. You know, his pool was to have a whole bunch of people that were already green lighted to get hit and working before he took care of it and showed off to other Pilis that he still had it. He was still that individual in the organization, right? I know I'm probably not making sense, but allow me to remind everyone what I said earlier. You know, it's real serious when you lose a, a fierro or a knife that belongs to the casa. It depends which casa you're in, whose you lose, what your discipline is going to be. But you're going to get a discipline. I don't know when Monster and Current got caught with it, if it was Terco or who it was. He lost that fierro, right? But that's where the green light came. He was supposed to get blasted because he lost that fierro, you know? And they're not going to do it in the shoe. They're going to wait for him to land to where who's calling him on that verde has some type of action there with another carnal or himself, right? Because carnales do feud with each other in the sense of, hey, do me a paro and hit. They might say, nah, hold up. Nah, chale. He's not going to get hit while he's here with me because you're in the wrong. They will, at times, go through struggles like that because they don't like each other. Sincerely, you know. A lot of people didn't like Chavo because of the way he carried himself, right? And the reason why I was so involved in the knowing of this was because, I'm not going to put names, but I had a younger homie on that yard, and Chavo was doing it to a lot of people, right? Like, not just to homies to Bakersfield, but I mean, if he saw an angle where he could work you and at the same time whack you, and what he was doing by whacking you, just covering in his tracks. That said, he was a good dolphin. You know, he knew how to work the organization real good. And, anyways, I know I was nobody or nothing, but believe me, if my homie would have got crossed up and something to that effect, I would have asked favors, to be looked into at least. Can't stop when he's directly there. And I know my homie has to walk his own path, but regardless, it's kind of what's lost. You hit CDC and you lose all that love and care, that, and you're from the same neighborhood. That is your homie type of thing. But anyways, it ended up that my homie was real close with Alfie, so it wasn't gonna happen regardless. But anyways, Going back to Monster, he was supposed to get whacked because Chavo had given his word already. The minute he gets there, he's gonna whack him for losing the house's peace. Again, dispensing, I can't really tell you whose house it was, but I know that was the reason he was to get hit in Folsom. Now, the scandalous part came and it reached the feds, believe me, was that he used Monster to try to get in the neighborhood and tax them. Hey, they owe money, but it wasn't even like that, you know. It was he was telling Monster, "Hey, your neighborhood owes money," and then he was getting in contact with someone on the street saying, "Hey, you love your homie in here? He owes money. You got to pay for it." He was being a dope fiend trying to get something. Regardless, he was going to have Monster in his head because it had been already been put out there, palabra, right? That Monster had it coming. Now, to the severity that he did, no. He lost the houses, okay. Maybe, hey, go to the corner. I'm gonna put two fools on you with fierros as your chicana. But, I seen worse things done by peanut butter for less, so that could be a possibility. But he tried to wipe him out. And the reason he tried to wipe him out was because it wasn't supposed to go down like that, right? It was a favor Chavo was doing to another Billy, you know, kind of carrying on that responsibility for losing the house's fierro. And then, yeah, you're going to get whacked. You owe this much feria. They'll, they'll discipline you, however, but it wasn't for Monster to get hit and removed and get thrown out like that, right? Get thrown out like that. Again, that's giving an individual too much power over you, right? And that's why when Monster did get hit, it was supposed to be over. Done deal. It was done, right? And it became a bigger issue because, what was this homie's name? B. This homie I had Hugo from Bakersfield, right? He did push for Boxer, excuse me. I'm thinking of a whole different thing for Monster, excuse me. He pushed for Monster, right? And wanted clarity. And I guess in Calipad, he did, Chavo got questioned on it. He got questioned on it. He got questioned from the feds, right? What are you doing? He lost the fierro. If he can't pay right now, the rest, wait. But they had a little thing going, or Chavo did mainly, right? Where it was worse than YA, right? YA, if somebody comes up to you and tells you, hey, you're a level, well, you got the right to whack his head off, right? But I guess he had a whole bunch of homies on the level status on the yard in Folsom, you know, basically no good status, but it's because he didn't want to whack them without getting fatty off of them. You see the type of individual he was? Even that fool that hit Monster, I believe the first time was big dude, real big dude from Verdugo. Anyways, well, he hit him and supposedly cleaned up his stuff, and then a month later he got out and got whacked that he was indebted again. And Chavo knew it was a circle that was never going to stop, and he was trying to gain from that circle. That's why Man, those that I knew around that were around Chavo was, hey, buenos dias, buenas tardes, and back away from that dude, right? Remember I told about Loquito de Bakersfield? Well, anyways, getting back to Monster, excuse me. I'm all over the place with this. He went down there and, Pili would tell him no, right? Charles, this is done. He paid with blood. If he needs to pay with feria, give him time to pay with feria. But it's done. It's taken care of. What's your insistence of removing him? Oh, he's on a lista. What lista? Chavo wasn't even supposed to put him on a lista because it was a favor asked from another Billy to him. He made this whole narrative and all this BS that he knew the more Pilis they reached, it was going to be used against him. Remember, everybody wanted to prove when they got out the shoe who had the bigger sack. Sorry, I say it like that. And Chavo knew this. He was going to become a victim. So he tried to cover it up by, he thought it was going to be that easy, right? As, "Hey, he's on my list, I remove him." And that other Pili was going to be like, "Ah, go ahead, remove him." But now he called him out on it. But it's impossible, right? For example, like I told you guys, what's good for a Pili in 1 year ain't good for the next Pili in the next yard. Even if it's the same prison. And that's exactly what happened. It's impossible to have kept that Pili that was, you could say no to Chavo long enough on that yard. Especially with, GP, everyone's telling. I know probably something, everybody be like, oh, this fool's fully. Believe me, I was sitting in the back 15 years. Everyone's telling about everything. And that's how that Billy ended up getting moved out that prison. I believe it was over the head of Toñito, if I'm not mistaken, on a different yard. And Chavo kept shooting word down there, to hit Monster, remove him. And the minute that Billy left, Monster got hit again. And this time, no, the vato locked it up. And you. Can't blame him. We go back to how I started. Oh, that's my Billy. That's my Billy from my town. That's why those that leave that comments and those comments trying to call me all types of names and then leave that comment on it. Are you speaking about my Billy? My Billy, if you only knew how quick your Billy will work you and throw you out. You know, they start off with the people from their city, their neighborhood, and then they see how far they could push it somewhere else. So, it's exactly what happened here. And it's a shame. Monster was a good homie. His name circle around that he used to buck up. He had done a few pegadas for different pilis. Just leave it at that. And he just fell to the into that okey doke. Chavo recalling homies from Bakersfield to New Folsom to go support him and show love to him. And look at the love he got, he received. You know, it's exactly what I speak on about. Right now, the causa is what you could give him, not what you could do in blood and knife. I said it before, it has value. But someone with feria will have more value to a pili than you'll ever will even serving double life, pegada tras pegada, if you just can't bring work to the table. you're irrelevant. And dispense I say it like that. But shortly after that is when Chavo died and pretty much died out, right? But you could say Chavo was the one that kicked it off. Because with Monster, he was one of the first ones that went out that far, put this whole narrative into play, try to cover his tracks, and, you know, instead of doing what he was asked from another brother, he did a tecato move and try to work it to his advantage. He was one of the first ones out the shoes, right? That did it. Now they do it out in the open, in front of everybody, bluntly, and they let it be known that why they're doing it. Now it's 10 times worse. Chow would try to cover his tracks. Now they don't even waste the time trying to do it. So again, don't fall into that make believe, Yes, there is good Billies. I'm not on here to spread poison like I said before. There is good Billies. But remember, you're fighting with your life, you're playing with your life, your family's life, your kids, and you're gonna go gamble to see if your Billy is one of them good ones or the ones he likes them vitaminas. With the said, I hope everybody continues to have a great day. Please stay true to yourself and loyal to your loved ones.
This is what we started. We always